try to do a lot of happy things. So I spent a lot of time with my friends as much as I could. And I did have some social support throughout my pregnancy, which I'm really thankful for. And even afterwards too, my closest friends lived out of state. But we always stayed connected, doing the video calls and things like that. And that was really helpful. And then I was able to get therapy, and then that really boosted things for me after that.
I think a lot of us do this hindsight is 2020 thing, right? And so if you look back now, you go, oh, geez, I wish I'd recognized those signs back then or whatever. How would you talk to people who may be in that state where they're sort of in touch with it, sort of not sure what to do? Like, what would you say to look for and then act upon?
I would notice if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you are noticing that you don't feel as emotionally connected to your baby as you would like to be, and it's the point where it's really uncomfortable for you. If you're feeling like you're unable to take care of yourself or your family, these are some of the symptoms of postpartum depression. Loss of interest in things. You're not as happy as you used to be. Things, that make you happy or give you that sense of pleasure that you just feel like you're just not in tune with that anymore. And this is very common too. Anxiety and depression have overlapped sometimes. And so it is possible to experience, postpartum depression and have a postpartum anxiety disorder as well, anxiety disorder. And that includes, OCD too. Some moms and dads experience that. If you're not feeling like yourself, I think that's one of the main ways to really be able to start identifying that I don't feel like myself. Even that, something as simple as that, that's another sign to really look for. If you're having feelings of worthlessness, you're having mood swings, those are some other signs as well.
And then what do you do with the client as far as like what adjustments they can make in their life? Because I know we all have the tendency to just like white knuckle it through. Like, this won't last forever. But then you're doing other damage in other areas. And suddenly you find yourself avoiding, and I just can't even look at my kid right now. So what can we do to help overcome some of that stuff?
I would definitely I know a lot of women usually have to contact with their OBGYN. Sometimes but not every OBGYN is postpartum friendly. I would say friendly in terms of is their knowledge, not as far as them not being able to provide care in that capacity. I know there's been a push for more OBGYNs to screen moms at their postpartum appointments, after having the baby. I know in a lot of lower income communities, a lot of moms skip those appointments. So there right now is a big push for pediatricians to consult with moms because moms are taking their babies to their appointments. And so a lot of the first contact for a lot of moms is with the pediatrician. And so that's something I'm really encouraging if there are any pediatricians listening to develop a system or a process where you're screening moms as well when she's bringing the babies for the visits.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if I'm a pediatrician listening to this, I'm like, one more thing I need to screen. It's like, well, no, you don't necessarily have to pull out the sheet, but you can do this through a series of questions, right? Just 3-4 questions. What are some questions to ask? Maybe not necessarily a physician, but family member, friend, relative who knows his things. What are some things you can ask that are, not going to elicit a defensive response?
I think with a lot of family members, sometimes they're like, oh, this is going to pass. Oh, you're going to be okay. And while I know that a lot of family members and friends mean well when they say these things, when moms are really going through perinatal mood and anxiety disorders, they don't feel like everything is okay. They don't feel like everything is going to be okay. And oftentimes those statements make moms feel like they're not understood. And oftentimes that is the case. So I think that the more knowledge that family and friends have about this area and ways to support moms is going to be really important. Their open-mindedness to to therapy and mental health and wellness in that area. I think that's where it really should start. And then some of the signs, if you're seeing mom withdrawn, if you see mom not getting a lack of sleep, if you hear her say comments that, about repeatedly, about worried about her own self, worried about the baby, or if you notice the mom doesn't seem, attached to the baby, that's when you can say, okay, are you feeling okay? I noticed this or I noticed that. I'm really worried about you. I think we should probably go to your doctor or go see someone. I can go with you. So that's like more where the support system comes in for the mom. I think with COVID and telehealth, that's been a really great thing. I know there are some providers who do in-home therapy for moms in this field, in this population. So that's something that's, that makes therapy more accessible for moms who can't leave their home or can't travel or have a longer healing time, as far as after giving birth. So I think being able to recognize some of those signs as well and knowing what to do with it and not just saying, okay, you're going to be fine kind of thing.
There's like the three things I picked up on there. Two have to do with what you noticed, which is a change. In school, we have the delta. It's like that represents the difference before and after. So if you notice a change, a drastic change that isn't otherwise explained by, oh, you had a long day at work, but something more enduring that we can notice. And the other one is noticing the lack of connectivity with your new baby. To notice those things if you're going through it yourself or if you're somebody who's observing it. And then the third thing is what I'm hearing from you is it's almost like we as a clinical community should probably create a short list of phrases to use that, or to phrases we pick up on, right? So like in suicide prevention, you hear people say like, I don't know if anybody'd miss me if I didn't wake up tomorrow. It's like, whoa, okay, let's pay attention to that. And because you had perinatal and as well as postpartum, we want to pay attention to phrases that the mom or dad, and we'll get to dads in a minute, may utter that may give us a clue that they're struggling. But then we also need like a short list of phrases to use that aren't invalidating too. What are some phrases you can use? You said a few of them, like, hey, it seems like you're not yourself or whatnot. What else can we use that might be helpful, that's not intrusive and also doesn't sound like, hey, you're crazy, go see the doctor? Because we're still not there yet, right? We're still not, as a community, ready to go seek help when we need it.
Yeah, it's more of like, I'm really worried about how you're feeling. There's some things you said that worry about me, or I noticed, that you're not as happy as you used to be. You seem a little bit withdrawn. Those are some, like, just really naming the behaviors and externally expressing the concern that you have about it is a good segue. And I think being able to do that sometimes really helps the mom to open up. Yeah. Sometimes moms don't really notice it at first. They might feel it, but they may not notice all the behaviors that are happening sometimes. So being able to sit down and really, express the concern that you have.
Yeah, crystallizes it.
Yeah. Definitely personalize it and doesn't make the mom feel shame or blame or anything like that.
Yeah, I think it opens up an avenue for them to explore it on their own too. It's like, oh, thank God somebody finally said something. Yes, I have been feeling this way. Yeah, that's great. As far as dads are concerned, what are you seeing with dads? And I'll share my story if you want in a minute, but before, after, during.
Sometimes with dads, I haven't worked extensively with dads, but I have noticed that some dads also become worried themselves. Sometimes they're worried about the baby. Sometimes they have anxiety about entering fatherhood. And I think stereotypically men tend not to be talkers of their feelings.
True. That's a great phrase, by the way, answering fatherhood. I love that. I'm going to steal that and reuse it later.
And so sometimes a lot of men can feel really disconnected and not feel like they have a community of other fathers that they can go to really connect. And so, there are dad groups that are out there. And I think one of the most important things to know for parents who, are having, planning to have children, have had children, or have, new additions to their families, that you're not alone when it comes to this, and there is support, and there is healing for it. This isn't something that you just really have to struggle through for a long period of time.
And it doesn't always need to look the same either. I write for a group here called Reno Dads, and we try to make that sense of community, offering activities, that sort of thing. But I think what I want to dispel is the myth that dads working through their stuff with other dads doesn't have to be this hugely vulnerable group in the middle of a bunch of strangers, right? Where you're opening up.
Right.
It can just be, going on a Sunday to Buffalo Wild Wings and watching football with a bunch of other dads, and invariably over beers and wings, you're gonna share some stuff, and then you get some validation, like, oh, good, it's not just me. So yeah, if you're a dad listening, and you're like, man, I thought I was alone and worrying about this, and I'm not allowed to worry because I'm a dude, and dudes aren't allowed to worry. It's like, no, don't do that. You're totally allowed to worry. I certainly did. I did. I had to be talked off the ledge a couple of times before we even started trying to have kids, because I did the whole like, the world's a messed up place, and I don't know if I want to bring kids into the world. And at one point or another, a colleague of mine said, "Don't you think that the good people in the world have an obligation to make more good people?" I was like, oh, you mean the burden's on me now? Like, I don't know if I want that responsibility. Then there was more anxiety. Like, no, I definitely don't want to have a kid. But it was good, and we did my wife and I did our own couples counseling around that period of time. So oftentimes you find greater connectivity through that vulnerability and intimacy with your mate, just by entering into some couples treatment. And it doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be super deep. It can just, be the, tune up and get you facing the right direction. It doesn't have to be great effort.
Yeah. And what I like to do to destigmatize therapy too, is to say that a lot of people feel like therapy is just reserved for severe mental health diagnoses, and it's not true. You don't have to have a diagnosis, and
Right.
a diagnosis is not always necessary either.
Right. I wish we wouldn't live in the world where insurance was a thing, because I've
Yeah.
said this before, that we're the only field of the medical profession broadly that still requires you to be broken before you can get treatment in the form of a diagnosis. If we're billing insurance, they require that. There's no pop the hood, check the belts and hoses 3 times a year tune-up like you get in dentistry or pediatrics even. Primary care, they want you to have the annual well-person checkup, and we still haven't turned that corner as far as insurance reimbursement, which is super unfortunate. I think it only adds to the stigma, and it keeps people out of care. So,
Yeah.
maybe part of, until we get there, maybe part of the pitch needs to be just shell out the money. It's whatever it costs you. It's going to cost way more in the long run if you don't attend to whatever's starting to go sideways. Because if it goes really, really sideways because it got unattended, then it's more expensive anyway. So, take care of yourself now. But part of why we do podcasts is so that people can pick up these tips and hints and insights that keep them, out of professional maintenance too. It sounds a little weird having a professional counselor or therapist say that. You think we'd want to make money, but not always. Talk a little bit, if you would, about your immigration work. That sounds like a pretty heavy lift.
Yeah, definitely. So before, I worked at an agency that primarily served immigrants and their families. And then I came upon immigration evaluations. And what those do, they support legal proceedings for immigrants who are in different types of situations. So, for example, VAWA is a Violence Against Women Act. And this also applies to men as well. These are people who have been in abusive relationships where their partners have threatened to, use immigration against them, have physically, emotionally, or economically abused them. So I do evaluations to help their case. It really just not I won't say outline.